Hello and welcome back to live coverage of the Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational brought to you by TCGplayer.com. I'm Tandy, joined by Bomat. So hi, Bomat.
Hi, Matt.
We have finished the first pod. Players who are 3-0 have advanced to day number 2. Everyone else is racing to 3 wins. The next up on the docket, we're going to be playing the winners pod. Anyone who is 2-1 in the event, that means 6 players, are all going to be battling it out for their third win. The winners will advance to day 2, and the losers will be going down into the elimination pod, where they'll be fighting the winners of the losers pod later on. We're going to be watching in this first match Kurt Spiess versus Harlan Fear, fellow Lost Boy. And, he's having a pretty good day so far at 2-1 with that Amber and Sapphire deck. So let's go ahead and get that up on the screen and take a look at it and discuss. Because we haven't actually seen too much of this deck on camera today. We saw way more yesterday in the last chance qualifier from Gbis and a few others. But this deck is something that 3 players in the event all work together on. This Brennan DeCandio, Mason Clark, who's also in the 2-1 bracket, as well as who we're watching now, Harlan Fear. So this is a deck that ramps a little bit with Mickey Mouse, ramps a little bit with Bell, Strange but Special, one jump ahead. What's the goal?
The goal is to play Stitch Carefree Surfer. Brennan, Harlan, and Mason identified Carefree Surfer as a card that they cared about a lot and decided that they wanted to play it better than everyone else, which to them means ramping it out early.
Yeah, and what they're also trying to do in this build is essentially play the game forever. Right, we have Hades, Lord of the Underworld. We have, everything just kind of replaces itself with Robin Hood, Stitch Rockstar, Stitch Carefree Surfer, Rapunzel. That's kind of the gist, and we're facilitating that with those ramp effects to get that online more quickly, so we can have these higher willpower characters on the table, so we can utilize all of our other stuff. On the other side of the table, we're going to be fighting against Kurt Spiess. Kurt is playing Amber Steel Stitch Blitz, and we'll get that list on the screen for you in just a second. His version is unique because he's playing 0 copies of Lilo Making a Wish.
Right. Kurt is instead prioritizing those lanterns. We see 4 copies of Lantern and 4 copies of Carefree Surfer, just like his opponent. So both players prioritizing getting that card down and getting it down quickly.
All right, this aggressive deck utilizes Ariel Spectacular Singer with all of those powerful spells like Grab Your Sword and Whole New World. We'll see who takes it down. Let's head on down to the feature match area and watch Kurt Spiess versus Harlan Fear. This is going to be a winners pod match, and the winners go to day number 2. All right, Harlan on your left with that Amber Sapphire deck, and Kurt on your right with Amber Steel. And we're off. Here we go. You Have Forgotten Me is the play on turn number 1. Nice Batman sleeves from Harlan. I dig them.
Yeah, I've been admiring Kurt's sleeves as well.
Same. They're like foil or something.
Yeah, foil Disney sleeves. Very
Love
impressive.
Love it. They're great for being in the inkwell. And we know the sleeves that have nothing on the back of them, the full white, full black, full red, will get a little awkward looking on the table, but anything with any sort of picture on it usually quite good for inkwell backwards. We have a 1 jump ahead for Harlan. Now we're going to go back Kurt's way. Let's see if he wants to deploy another threat or perhaps just play a lantern. Or both.
Or both. That's kind of one of the keys to Lantern is that you often get to use it the turn you play it, which makes it sometimes better than 1 jump ahead. But, both cards have upsides and downsides. No follow-up for Kurt, just a Lantern.
All right. Once these players do reach the 3-win threshold, that will grant them access to day number 2's single limit top 8 bracket, where first place will be $2,000. These players are no stranger to the spotlight. Kurt Spiess played on the SCG Tour for quite some time, and Harlan Fear dominated the SCG Tour during the 2010s with 5 wins, and is one of the best players I've ever watched play any game.
For sure.
He's looking here on how best to defend against this early start from Kurt. Now, the new dog, not that threatening, just quest for 1, but what it represents is the potential shift for maybe the best card in the game, Stitch Rockstar.
Right. Now, you're a huge fan of Stitch Rockstar. These players, maybe not so much. They're only playing 2 copies of Rockstar in contrast with the 4 copies of Careless Surfer.
Yeah, that's on Harlan's side of things, right? Kurt's playing the 4 Stitch Rockstars.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, sorry. I thought I was looking at the new dog in Harlan's hand.
You're great.
Kurt does have the Rockstars.
So many Stitches running around. It's easy to
Stitch,
confuse them.
Stitch.
I try my best to keep them consistent, but it's very difficult. looks like Kurt does have a couple of rock stars in hand, so let's see if that's what he wants to do for turn. He can do that, plus maybe sing Grab Your Sword to kill the opposing Stitch New Dog to prevent a potential shift, or just prevent some challenging. But maybe wants to be a little more conservative, and we could just say shift plus go or a shift plus quest 3. Not a whole lot of punishes, honestly, from Harlan. Not a lot of buff effects or characters with rush.
Yeah. Kurt's hand a little awkward though. You saw inking the first Rockstar to play the second, but no more ink left in hand, and no more cheap characters to kind of churn through more cards with this Rockstar. So Kurt's gonna be looking at the top of the deck, or maybe just looking to sing a whole new world as quickly as possible.
I discussed the matchup quite a bit with Harlan and the other members of Team NDA, is what they
Yeah.
call themselves. And Harlan is a big fan of playing against the whole new world decks because it allows his Bell Strange with special to become turbo.
Yes.
All right, here's a 6-drop. This is a Robin Hood Archer. We have 2 cards in hand because we ramped a bunch, and now we do get to draw because Kurt still has 3, and we get to sing a 1 jump ahead with our Mickey Mouse Detective. Mickey Mouse looking quite good this game.
Yeah. I'm pretty happy about that turn if I'm Harlan. That was good.
Should I become a voice actor? Probably not. I'll do
that-
me and Meat World.
Wow, that was pretty good. You know, a couple tweaks on that, and you have yourself a Stitch.
Oh, yeah. All right, here is a singing of a whole new world. Both players going to discard hand and draw 7. Kurt is singing it, so he has access to all of his ink right now. We'll see how he wants to continue the turn. Harlan's got to be pretty happy about that, too, though, because this hand didn't look that great, and now he has a fresh one. But Stitch Rockstar going to start replacing all these one-cost characters with a card as long as you play them and exert them, and that's what he's doing.
And this play pattern is a little bit harder for Amber Sapphire to punish without access to Grab Your Sword or any kind of, board wipes. So these smaller characters Kurt are probably going to survive the turn, and Kurt's going to get to use them to trade off as efficiently as he can.
Right. The Amber Sapphire deck is pretty great at dealing with 1 large threat or 2 large threats. It's not that good at dealing with a wide board. And
Yeah.
Stitch Rockstar really facilitates that wide board with his ability. You know what? I know a lot of characters' abilities names. I can't tell you Stitch Rockstar's abilities name.
Adoring fans.
Adoring fan. I'm an adoring fan.
Yes, you are.
I'm an adoring fan. All right. So a lot of characters deployed for Kurt, and they all replace themselves. Stitch Rockstar acting as that replacement engine, and now Harlan's back up against the wall. Can start playing things that are large like Carefree Surfer, but needs to deal with all of these characters quickly.
Now, on the upside, Carefree Surfer, as long as the game doesn't end too quickly, will get to trade off with probably several of these characters.
Well, there's a Let It Go being sung with the Robin Hood, and that's going to take care of the Rockstar, but that puts 2 ink into the inkwell because both of the shift and the card underneath it go to the inkwell together. And with so many cards in hand from Kurt Spiess, you have to really love getting that extra ink, and especially because the Rockstar already drew 4 cards.
Right, so now just a bunch of smaller characters up against Harlan's board. And Captain Hook, of course, very useful as a challenger, can take care of most of Robin Hood's willpower. And I was talking this morning on Twitter with a couple of the players on this Amber Sapphire list, specifically about Mr. Smee, that
Smee!
3-cost 2/5
Right.
with a single lore and no other text. And when I brought up Mr. Spee, Brendan replied, "Willpower equals cards." And I think that's a lot of the philosophy behind this Amber Sapphire list.
Yep.
There's a ton of willpower on all these characters, and there's, direct cards. You can convert that willpower directly into cards with Rapunzel, but even just virtual card advantage, especially against steel decks, when you have a huge character like Stitch Rockstar, Stitch Carefree Surfer, that's going to take multiple resources from Kurt to be able to deal with at some point. And that's how Harlan's going to convert this single large character into an advantage.
All right, let's see if Kurt can quest a bunch or provide some punishes for the interaction. The high willpower, like you said, is relatively difficult for these smaller characters to deal with. And what ends up happening a lot of times is you deal some damage to them, and then you do this and play Tinkerbell giant fairy, or grab your sword and kind of combo kill creatures with two different things.
Right. That's one of Kurt's specialties is kind of letting opponents build up these huge boards, and then just using that to get a lot of value off the grab your sword. It doesn't kill any of the characters outright most of the time, but it makes it that much easier for Kurt's characters to trade off.
All right, gonna go back Harlan's way after the Tinkerbell Giant Fairy plus an attack clears up some of the characters from the other side. Harlan with a gripful, since we did play Carefree Surfer after a whole new world, and our hand is quite stacked. Let's see what he wants to deploy to defend against these four characters from the opponent, including the potentially scary Tinkerbell Giant Fairy.
Yeah, I think Harlan might be happy to play another Carefree Surfer here. Once characters start turning sideways, like I've been saying, these Carefree Surfers are going to be doing pretty well. The Tinkerbell is a bit of a threat, but the Surfer is going to be eating up one or two other small characters uh, in order to even get the Tinkerbell into range to be able to take down a Surfer.
Yeah, I don't think we got to worry about it. Harlan very likely to blow up the Tinkerbell this turn. Gonna go for Carefree Server instead. Probably not gonna exert any of the characters and not expose them. But like you said, that Carefree Surfer with 7 willpower currently just a daunting task. But we're gonna sing Let It Go instead, and a great use of the large body from the Carefree Surfer, and a great way to gain some board advantage.
Oh, Mr. Smee in the Inkwell.
Rip.
You know,
What about Smee? Smee? What about me?
as good as that 5 willpower is, at the end of the day, Mr. Smee is a little towards the bottom of the roster. All right, back to Kurt.
Yep. All right, what we got? Still got a lot of cards in hand, but this Amber Sapphire deck is well constructed to defend against the area of effect damage of Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy, and Grab Your Sword. A lot of high willpower, doesn't care too much about it, but that's one of the main defensive measures from the Amber Steel deck. And if you're not able to interact in that way, you must win the game. And winning the game seems relatively difficult against these large willpower creatures as well.
Yeah, Kurt with at least one copy of Smash there. These Amber Steel players, for the most part, only playing 2 copies. It is inkable, but it's maybe not the most efficient. It's kind of hard to trade up with a Smash, but it does help you dole out your damage exactly the perfect way to be able to take down larger characters eventually.
Perhaps mild regrets. We cast to be our guest instead of singing it. Found a Carefree Surfer, but can't play it this turn. That would have been nice to get down and potentially challenge, and that would have obviously exposed our Simba to a challenge from the opponent, but it is what it is.
Yeah, you kind of have to be fine with that if you're Kurt. You know, the Simba is likely going to trade off for 2 damage on one of these large characters at some point, and Kurt has enough characters to be able to make use of that extra 2 damage at some point.
All right, let's see if Kurt wants to quest and make himself vulnerable to challenges. It seems like he's just going to pass the turn with everything at the ready. This is a common tactic he's deployed, and it seems to be working quite well. We're at 2-1 so far in the event. Our only loss so far coming to the perfect record former world champion in Magic the Gathering, Nathan Stoyer.
Yeah, both of our 3-0 players playing Ruby Amethyst, kind of the boogeyman of the format, and 2 of only 3 players who registered it in our event. So 7 ink here. Gotta keep answering those Tinkerbells. Harlan is making sure not to give Kurt any extra value off of those.
Yep. All right, here we go. Mickey Mouse Detective is the follow-up, and we're going to go questing +4. These high willpower Carefree Surfers. Well, you know what? They're Carefree Surfers. They don't care.
Yeah.
Why would they? They got so much willpower. But no more Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, so the threat of challenging and really punishing is mostly gone. We do have the Ariel that can sing Grab Your Sword, or perhaps Whole New World. This turn, we'll see what Kurt has and what he wants to do.
All right. How about this for a deck name? 2 Elvis songs. I'm pretty sure. I'm not a huge Elvis fan. I think Blue Hawaii and Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride are both Elvis songs. They're at least both in Lilo. Let's call the deck Blue Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride, or is that
No,
too
it's
long?
literally called Blue Punch Buggy because that's one of the games that Stitch teaches Lilo,
Well,
or Lilo teaches Stitch.
then why isn't that on the screen?
Because it's called Rapunzel. Because I called it
Sounds like
Rapunzel.
sounds like it's called a lot of things.
It is called a lot of
Look,
things.
we have to pick one. I like Blue Hawaii.
Well, we don't have a lot of space for Amber, Sapphire, Blue, Hawaii, so we are just gonna call it Amber Sapphire.
I suppose.
Maybe in a year from now we'll have cool deck names and we'll be able to use the symbols with the cool deck name.
Yeah.
But right now, I want everyone to know what the colors are. We are in month number 2.5 of
Yeah.
the game existing.
Maybe once the pre-constructed challenger decks come out.
All right. All right, Blue Hawaii. That's the name of the deck from now on. That's fine. All right, so Kurt Spiess is playing Stitch Blitz. How about that? You want to change one, you got to change the other.
The war of the deck names.
Yeah.
All right, so if you see that smash come down on your surfer, if you're Harlan, you have to know that grab your sword is in Kurt's hand most likely. Suppose it could just be a challenge from this new dog, but everything to me points to Kurt trying to set up this song. But he decides to hold it for a turn at least.
I mean, I don't hate it. I think that you need to clear, and he desperately wants to hold on to the grab your sword to potentially maybe double grab your sword plus some challenges to clear more things, because we're behind right now overall, but we're not behind that much on lore. And as long as Harlan's not threatening lethal, holding the grab your sword for the big double grab your sword Tinkerbell attack turn seems a little bit stronger.
Yeah, and here's maybe what Kurt is thinking about. Wow.
Here's what he's thinking about. How do I beat Hades in a Stitch Carefree Surfer
Yeah.
when I can't even get this Carefree Surfer off the table?
So this the grab your sword on the previous turn would have been pretty good value for Kurt, but it likely would have involved leaving a character exerted. So Kurt seems to be trying to save up these characters and wait to use them all at the same time because he might only get to use them once.
Right. So one of the cool things about Lorcana is that the damage on the characters is permanent.
Yeah.
It's cumulative. And so we use the dice to keep track of how much damage is on them. There's not really a whole lot of things that buff strength, or at least that are competitively playable, so we don't usually have to represent those with anything.
Yep.
But, with characters with low willpower, oftentimes they take one hit and they're gone. And so you got to find ways to leverage those smaller bodies with some combinations of things like smash, grab your sword, or other characters to gang up on the larger things. The larger things cost more, they quest for more, they often have more powerful abilities, but we've seen the Stitch Blitz deck do some wonderful things so far over the last few events, and Kurt Spiess, I'm not going to count him out until Harlan hits 20 lore. I'm not going to do it.
For sure.
All right, here's Shifted. Stitch Rockstar, the potentially start of a great turn. We can flood the board with cheap characters maybe and force Harlan to get interactive, and that's really where you want to be. You want him to have to challenge your stuff so that you can fire back.
Yeah. And speaking of challenging, the thing about Stitch Rockstar is it is going to leave you with some vulnerable characters. So a lot of the time what you'll see is once a Rockstar turn starts, this is the turn where characters do start turning sideways, because Harlan can't challenge everything. You're gonna give him targets. Maybe you present a lot at once, and Kurt is running pretty well off the top here.
Yeah, a lot of characters off the Stitch Rockstar draws, finding to keep churning, and we still have the ability to play another 3-drop or 2-drop. One thing I want to note is that yesterday, if you watched our Last Chance qualifier, Kurt was very crisp in his resolutions of Rockstar with the Simba Future King, and he would loot before drawing a card with the Stitch Rockstar. That's how it automatically does it on Pixelborn, the unofficial fan-made client for Lorcana. But in real life, you actually get to choose how you'd like to stack your triggers. And so at the beginning of the tournament, for the player meeting, I said, hey, Kurt, just so you know, Simba's a draw 2 discard with Rockstar.
Yeah.
All right. A little bit better.
A little bit better.
A little bit better. A little more information on what to discard.
Yeah.
So we flooded the board. We got Simba as a protector. We got 5 extra characters. Other than that, Rockstar can quest. Carefree Server can quest. Ariel can sing. What do you want to do? Nothing? Something?
Kurt spent a ton of ink on these characters and has a whole new hand to, as thanks. But now we have 3 characters that can all sing.
Sing and quest, and I think singing here is wrong because of well reasons. Questing seems right because there's just so much in play
Yeah.
that your opponent just has to do something next turn, and you have a bodyguard that kind of maybe gums up the work slightly. And the strength on the opposing character is actually not very high, so your Carefree Surfer and Rockstar are maybe not both safe, but I would say one of them is at least safe.
Yeah. A lot of the time, a reason why I would be kind of reticent to quest in this spot without getting down at least one grab your sword is what we're going to see Harlan do is use this Hades to get some damage down before it gets swept up. But with that being the only 2 willpower character, I suppose Kurt's not too concerned if the other characters get some questing in, or
Yeah.
challenging rather. Because that's kind of a spot where you can lose value if you're Kurt, right? Once this Hades trades off, that's 2 damage that you're losing from your grab your sword, and damage that's on your character that might not have been otherwise. Multiple whole new worlds in Kurt's discard.
Harlan lining up attacks. Gonna go ahead and trade. Hades for Simba. Simba down. Now no more bodyguard protection, and now these characters can challenge at will. Hades looking to go first. No, we're gonna go Carefree Surfer. Gonna challenge the Rockstar for 4.
Maybe looking at a Rapunzel here.
Well, yes, definitely, but
Yeah.
knows that this trade can happen no matter what. So gonna go ahead and throw off the Mickey Mouse, making some space on the board. We can heal this Carefree Surfer up to full. Maybe he's changed his mind. Maybe he doesn't want to do that this turn. We'll see. We're going to eat the aerial, and that leaves 3 willpower left. Or excuse me, 4 willpower left on the Hades, so currently not vulnerable to the grab your sword without some help. Now we'll see if Harlan wants to challenge one of the smaller characters. Maybe the LeFou, one of the 2 LeFou, since they can quest for 2.
And Kurt does
No.
have plenty of these smaller characters to, the damage starts adding up in combination with the grab your sword, but they all just have 1 strength, and Harlan has gotten rid of everything else at this point, so it's going to be pretty inefficient for Kurt. Going to be throwing away entire characters just to take down some of these larger ones. Um, so the waiting game was over, right? Kurt kind of blinked, started exerting characters, and then decided to exert his hold board because of that. And Harlan got to make all the decisions really, and take care of basically everything that mattered on Kurt's side.
All right, one of our back tables is finished, I believe. Maybe we can go get confirmation from that to see who took it down. Mason versus Don Delosier is just completed. Our director is going to go ask who won, and we'll have that update for you. The winner of that match will advance to our top 8, day number 2 tomorrow. Don Delosier defeats fan favorite Mason Esports Clark. I'm rooting for Don. I like Don's list quite a bit. We talked about it earlier in the week.
Right, it's cool. It's another take on Amber Steel, more aggression focused, kind of like Frank, but with some different card choices, including a couple Fire the Cannons. We will see her on camera tomorrow.
All right. Absolutely ridiculous turn from Harlan Fear has mostly cleared Kurt's board and left him with just 4 middling characters, and very few things were left the field for Harlan.
Plus, a couple of the cards in Harlan's hand. We just saw Be Our Guest pick up another Hades Infernal Schemer. That's going to be important. But I also caught a glimpse of a Bell's Strange But Special. And once Kurt is kind of forced to go through 1 or 2 grab your swords, Bells are going to threaten to start coming down and questing for 5 at a time, which is really going to push Harlan towards finishing this game.
Right. All right. We're going to play Be Our Guest. Look at the top 4. Ariel missed, as it usually does. The strength of that card often just comes from Singer 5 and not so much from musical debut, but always feels good when you hit and feels bad when you miss.
Yeah.
especially when the game's been going long and you really need another grab your sword and you really need some more help. Didn't get to see what he found, but it looked like another aerial. So we're going to take a peek at the top four, find another grab your sword or a whole new world. With Harlan still at 5 or 6 cards in hand, a whole new world doesn't actually sound that bad. You can respray the board again, and it just keeps going back and forth like that forever until
Yeah.
somebody finally hits 20 after maybe the longest siege in human history.
Yep. Decides on that whole new world. So this other grab your sword is going to go to the bottom, which is a pretty significant tool for Kurt that he might be missing access to as this game develops. Now he has to decide whether to try to flood the board this turn, get empty before a whole new world next turn.
Yeah, it seems like he's gonna go for that because playing the Lefa just or I was wrong. We're just gonna cast it because we don't have any singers here. Harlan's gonna discard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards, and Kurt draws 7 from empty. So a nice little sequence from Kurt. The aerial spectacular singer finding the whole new world has completely reshaped this game, and we've gone so deep that now both players are looking at the deck count, and Kurt only has about 10 or 15 left. Not sure how many Harlan has left, but I imagine it's roughly the same since he's playing a bunch of carefree surfers and all of the draw sevens are both players.
Yep.
The difference, I think, at this point is just Rockstar drew 5 or so.
Yeah, we're kind of Kurt has more characters than Harlan does, but Harlan's are significantly bigger.
Right. But
So,
Kurt's in burn you out mode, and Harlan's gonna have to challenge probably.
yeah, absolutely. Those LeFous were pretty key. They came down over the last couple turns with Rockstar, and they're the reason Kurt actually has a meaningful clock here. Harlan counting up the total lore, trying to figure out how much he has to deal with. It's going to be a lot because Harlan is unlikely to be able to threaten lethal next turn unless he plays a bell or two.
All right, Harlan, fresh 7 plus the draw for turn. Ton of options, trying to navigate a complex board state, but starts with eating 2 foes. They're gone. Now we have Hades, another Carefree, and a Rapunzel that can each either challenge or quest. Questing seems reasonable for the Rapunzel since it can't knock down either of these Simbas by itself.
Now, Harlan, I think, would like to either start this turn with a Rapunzel or a Carefree Surfer. If you're going to play one of those, play it early because you're drawing cards, but does also have this Hades Lord of the Underworld, so his entire discard pile is at Harlan's disposal.
Now, one thing I want to note is that Harlan has essentially cleared enough to prevent Kurt from winning next turn. There's no shift stitches available, and we can only quest for 6 up to 19. With the Hades, we can get back Bell, Strange but Special, and that, coupled with the lore generation that's already in play, will force Kurt to answer the Bell and maybe one thing in play, or else Harlan can potentially win the game next turn. So much lore at his disposal. Let's see what he does.
Let's see, 7. Looks like 13, maybe 14 ink for Harlan. Can get a lot done with that. Costs 8 total to pick up the bell like you were talking about, but we are going to start with this Rapunzel.
Okay, gonna draw 3. Not afraid of being decked. Still ahead. Well, I guess behind on card count overall, but that means he has more cards left in deck. Now we're gonna play 5-cost Maleficent, the quest for 3. What's the surname on that? I know you know.
Uninvited.
Uninvited. Uninvited.
And
Yes.
Harlan did find the bell off the Rapunzel after all, meaning rather than playing the Hades, he was able to get just that much more lore into play, and is now, like you said, threatening to win next turn.
Yep, and Kurt doesn't have a lot of recourse. Has gone through a bunch of grab your swords. Has about 10 cards left in deck. Knows the majority of them based on his inkwell and discard pile.
Yeah, that grab your sword is 7 cards down, I think. Which is, the only way you're really reaching that if you're Kurt is through another whole new world, which is pretty risky.
Yeah, I also don't think he has it. We have a couple of Tinkerbell giant fairies that can come down and maybe I don't know, bust up some of the characters. But I think Harlan has just put Kurt in an unmanageable position based on his hand.
Right. A couple aerials you can combine. A be our guest first, and then an aerial does get you to a grab your sword, but without multiple grab your sword, I think this might be too much to bear.
So we can start. We can use LeFou to sing, and that'll give us access to all of our ink. And then maybe something that draws cards can help us find another grab your sword. But I don't know how many are in the discard pile. I assume it's at least 2 and maybe 3.
Most likely, yes. And then if be our guest looks at a grab your sword, that's all the way back at the bottom again. But you don't really have much choice, right? The Bell will put Harlan up to 16, and then if Kurt fails to answer 2 other characters, that'll be lethal. So all 3 of those readied characters up at the top of the screen represent the game ending. Even if Kurt is able to clear all the exerted characters, Harlan will win. So Kurt essentially has to find direct damage. He's just thinking about the best way to do that now.
Yeah, the 6 willpower on Maleficent Uninvited, 5 willpower on the Rapunzel, and 4 willpower on the Belle Strange but Special. The Belle Strange but Special is currently active with a quest for 5, and an uphill battle to say the least. I can't imagine that Kurt finds a way out, but he's got some time and he's got a lot of resources, and I've been wrong before. It's happened. I know it's rare, but it happens.
Exactly. And
Exactly what? What'd I just say?
I
What did I just say, Matt?
I was
Exactly?
talking about the gameplay.
And I was talking about how I've been wrong before, and you said exactly. What a jerk.
Kurt started off with this aerial and whiffed.
Yeah.
So now making sure he knows the location of these last few cards. But I think if he lost track of that grab your sword and decided not to play the be our guest first, I don't think Kurt has any more outs.
No. All right, let's see. Now we can see the discard pile. I only saw one grab your sword there. I wonder if there's a bunch of grab your swords.
There's one near the top. There was definitely one at the bottom.
Okay, so maybe 2 grab your swords still left, but I don't know how easy it is for him to put some damage on his characters and then play Rapunzel to draw into both of them. But maybe that's what he's trying to set up. Unfortunately, I think it just not going to happen.
Yeah, Kurt's characters aren't actually big enough to take advantage of with Rapunzel, right? Harlan's exerted strength are 1, 4, 3, 3, and 4, meaning Kurt can draw at most 1 card off a single Rapunzel.
Yeah, he's trying to hold up 2 of the aerials to sing the grab your swords. LeFou going in.
Singing Be Our Guest.
Okay.
Kurt desperately trying to think of the combination of cards that gets him out of this spot. And I'm not totally sure it exists.
It's double grab your sword, but getting double grab your sword is close to impossible, if not actual impossible. And Kurt's trying to essentially find like an attack that lets him Rapunzel to draw one, and he needed to hit one off of one of the aerials and failed. And so at this point, it's like Rapunzel twice, and both of the top 2 have to be grab your sword, and even then, I don't think it's enough. So
yeah, I don't know whether Kurt remembers the grab your sword that was put on the bottom earlier, because the location of that card is crucial here. Alright, counting out some more ink. Be our guest. There's another grab your sword, and it's going on the bottom.
Found a Carefree Surfer, so we can use that to draw 2, and then maybe draw 1 of the grab your swords, and then we can attack, draw 1 with Rapunzel, maybe find the other grab your sword on the bottom of the deck that we just placed. I don't know if that calculus adds up. I need to ask Frank Carson. He's the math guy here.
Yeah.
All right, one on the Rapunzel, one on the Simba, and we'll draw a card. Okay.
That's a grab your sword.
That's a grab your sword.
But we don't have any more of those impulse effects in Ariel or Be Our Guest, so I think the other grab your sword is going to be too deep for Kurt to reach. Which means Belle is just going to survive.
Now, is there any way to sing this grab your sword and kill most things? 2, 2, 1, 1. No. And we can't, we could maybe shift Tinker onto Tinker, but we don't have enough ink now because of all the other things we played this turn. Now, grab your sword comes down, dealing 2 more to everything, but that leaves a lot of characters still on the field. And with only 2 ink left, I think Kurt Spiess is out of time. But we'll see if he can condense the board down to keep Harlan from questing for 9. 9 is a lot, but
Yeah.
with the current state of affairs, doesn't seem that difficult.
Kurt is out of stuff, and none of Harlan's characters have died.
All right, Kurt, pack it in, buddy. Come on. Come on, man.
Hoping against hope.
Yeah. Never give up. Never surrender.
You know when you're playing Scrabble and you've got your tiles and you don't see a word, so you think, maybe if I just rearrange them a little,
Yes.
and a word will appear. That's what Kurt
right.
was looking for.
Game number 1 goes to Harlan Fair. Kurt couldn't quite figure it out. I don't know if there was an answer. And we are going to be moving on to game number 2. All right, we have a judge call. 1 moment. I'll be right back. Why don't you feel for me?
All right, I'm gonna talk some more about the preparation process for Team NDA. Mason Clark, Harlan Fear, and Brennan DeCandio. Harlan told me that Brennan plays sometimes as much as 30 games a day on Pixelborn, and then would come back and report the results. And it turns out every time this happened, Brennan would say, "Yeah, the deck feels good," and then Harlan and Mason would go, "And what else? Can you give us anything else to go for?" So Brennan had a very high win rate, but they had to kind of determine which cards really mattered in the metagame. And like I said, they landed on Stitch Carefree Surfer and decided to try to maximize that card. So that's how they ended up pairing Amber with Sapphire, including a bunch of ramp cards to get down Surfers early, particularly Grammatala as a ramp card that also usually sticks around as an extra character to count for Carefree Surfer. And like I said, willpower equals cards is part of the mantra for the rest of the cards in this list. And we saw that come to bear against this Amber Steel deck. Kurt had a lot of cards, but wasn't able to trade them into all that willpower that Harlan had available.
All right, I'm back from the judge call. We had a minor infraction on the back table, but it was fixed with relative ease. And now we're moving on to game number 2 between Harlan Fear and Kurt Spiess. Both these players are 2-1 in the event. The winner will be into day number 2. The loser will be fighting for their life in the elimination pod in just a little while. Game number 1 to Harlan looked pretty solid, and I know that this is a matchup that they've tested quite a bit. So I expect him to completely understand his position in all situations. Harlan is no rookie when it comes to card games. He's a 5-time SCG Open winner. SCG is Star City Games, the premier organizer for Magic the Gathering during the 2010s for the SCG Tour.
Right.
Him and myself and a number of other of our friends played on that series for quite some time. He was the founder and captain of the organization at Team Nova, and he's also been a coach and content creator. His favorite Disney movie is Moana. He's also a member of the Lost Boys. He donates those lovely locks to Wigs for Kids, and he owns 3 businesses and is a full-time woodworker. That's Harlan Fear, good friend and co-host on the Lost Boys podcast, and glad to see him here in our event and doing well. His opponent is Kurt Spiess, who won our last chance qualifier yesterday, and he's playing his same Stitch Blitz deck. Harlan with the blue Hawaii, that Amber Sapphire Stitch-based deck with Carefree Surfers and whatnot, was played by 3 different players in the event. 2 of them are at 2-1, and 1 of them is at 1-2. Excuse me, Mason lost to Don, so Mason's knocked down to 2-2. But Harlan looking to win this and represent for Team NDA in the top 8, hopefully.
Yeah, talking to the players after round 1, all three members of Team NDA lost their first round, but they have battled back despite a team kill last round,
Mhm.
and are still in contention to make day 2 here.
Okay. Hook for Kurt is the one drop and matched by Stitch New Dog from Harlan. And likely both characters going to sit and stare at each other until one of them wants to break serve. It's been the modus operandum for Kurt throughout most of the event. And I think it's correct. Offering trade seems rather poor. Here's a one jump ahead. We're going to accelerate a bit, putting the Smee into the inkwell because we are skipping the 3. We're going one jump ahead. That's the whole deal.
One jump ahead of the bread line.
I have to watch Aladdin now. I haven't watched Aladdin in so long, and I love that movie. Robin Williams, easily my favorite actor from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Hook, one of my favorite movies. Him as Peter Pan changed me as a child, and as Genie too. You know, he was the voice of my young generation, and
Yeah. I'm
big
a
fan.
huge fan of Gilbert Gottfried's Iago. I would do an impression, but I think we would lose viewers. Pretty abrasive.
Hold on, I can maybe do it. I gotta give me a phrase.
Oh,
Give me a
I can
phrase.
do it. I just don't want to.
I want to do it. Hit me. Give me a phrase.
I can't take it anymore.
That was painful. All right. So after that one jump ahead, Harlan looking pretty good here on turn 3 with the potential for 4 ink. Can play Bell Strange with special, but maybe considering what to put in the inkwell for the extra drop. Just a lantern for Kurt on his turn 3, but he's looking to shift a Stitch Rockstar next turn and maybe use it alongside Grab Your Sword to do some serious damage to Harlan's board position.
Now, we've been talking about these carefree surfers that Team NDA really emphasized, and they worked out very well for Harlan last game. Kurt was just not able to work through all that willpower.
All right, here's a Bell Strange with special. This is what we do for one jump ahead. Now, what do we ink? Rapunzel doesn't seem great in the spots, but perhaps the extra cards later on is worth trying to hold it, but I don't know that he has anything else to ink. Maybe a Let It Go. We're going to pass it back Kurt's way. Draws for turn.
And I wonder if this is the first time we've seen an early Bell in this tournament. I wonder whether it'll make Kurt less willing to jam those whole new worlds.
Absolutely. That's definitely a huge downside to playing a whole new world when your opponent is playing Bell Strange but special. You actually built a really cool steel Sapphire deck when we first started playing that used whole new world with Bell Strange but special, and it was quite good, but I can only imagine when your opponent does it, it must feel way better.
Yeah, absolutely. I miss that deck.
I got Hooky, and he is looking to quest or do nothing, or maybe sing. It's a do nothing.
Yeah, Kurt does have access to Grab Your Sword, but you really don't want to play that without being able to finish off Bell. Harlan does have that Rapunzel, would have been able to punish such a play. Boom.
Okay. Wow. Nice play here. Bell Strange with special allows for 2 ink drops. Now Bell Strange with special can quest with the Stitch New Dog. This might be an opening for Kurt to come back into the game, but Hades putting the 2 hooks into the inkwell does give Kurt a lot of extra resources to work with, and we'll see what he can do with them. Here is Stitch Rockstar. Now we can start playing these 1 and 2 cost characters to draw some cards.
And Kurt shifted that Stitch very quickly. Didn't even consider whether he wanted to play a Grab Your Sword here. So he doesn't care that much about this Bell right now.
Well, he could still sing it if he wants to too, right?
It's true, but if that was your play, if you wanted to play Grab Your Sword, I think the new dog would have wanted to trade off into the Bell. So Kurt decided,
I see.
I'm not doing that this turn. Bell is kind of in this weird middle ground right now where Harlan is kind of out of resources to use with her,
Right.
but she also isn't online yet, so she's not questing for very much.
All right, so Harlan here gonna eat the LeFou. Now, here's one thing about the Stitch Blitz deck that I want to point out, and that's that when you're Stitch Rockstarring, all your characters are vulnerable to being challenged. And so if you play a bunch of characters that only have 1 strength, like Simba, Future King, and LeFou, you allow your opponent with their smaller characters to just eat them for free, which kind of negates the free cards you're getting off the Rockstar. So my initial builds with Rockstar often involved higher strength and willpower characters that quested for little, like Minnie Mouse, the 2-drop from Amber, as well as Aladdin Cornered Swordsman, because they just had higher strength and
Hmm.
punishes your opponent for challenging.
Yeah, the draw off, maybe it was off the Simba or the draw for turn for Kurt was a whole new world. Not really interested in that anymore. But the last card in Harlan's hand was a Hades Lord of the Underworld. A little bit awkward here. No cards in the discard. No character cards in the discard, at least.
Right. And Frank Carson and myself, we were playing some Pixelborn earlier in the week, and we want to test out against the Blue Hawaii deck to see how his Amber Steel Stitch Blitz deck was going to fare against it. And when we were testing with the Blue Hawaii deck, we had the Hades do nothing in this matchup all the time.
Okay.
And so I think that's just common. It's excellent in matchups where they challenge you, but it seems like Kurt is just never challenging except to trade.
Yeah. Best possibles for Harlan. Love this Carefree Surfer, especially when it draws another Carefree Surfer.
Yeah, and that's going to chain up nicely. And Kurt not deploying enough pressure. And Harlan here in the driver's seat. Let's see if he can close it out here in the next few turns, or at least threaten to start questing for a ton with the Bell, strange but special. Hades going to challenge the Simba and eat it. And we'll see if the Stitch wants to go ahead and eat the Simba and trade, or if Bell maybe wants to eat it. But potentially 5 lore later on means that it's probably a Stitch New Dog trade or nothing.
And Harlan is now at the point he has 8 ink in his inkwell and has enough card flow now after finding these surfers that on any given turn he can ink 2 cards and immediately get this bell online. But in the meantime, he's choosing not to ink this Maximus or this Carefree Surfer because he might want to just play them as cards later on and knows that he'll have the opportunity if he does want to get to 10 ink later.
Right. He's at 8 right now, which means that he'll be able to get to 10 when he wants to,
Yeah.
as long as the Bell's still in play. And the Carefree Surfer and the Maximus both quite strong, given the circumstances. But Maximus seems like a fine one to play because you have bigger fish to fry next turn.
Yeah, pretty sure you're playing a Carefree Surfer and uh,
One of the ink.
yeah, not super likely to follow that up with a Maximus maybe.
Okay, going back Kurt's way, we did see a loot last turn with the Simba, and that discarded a whole new world, so it doesn't have the big wheel to refresh. Going to be reliant on the Stitch Rockstar to do most of the heavy lifting. I don't see any cheap characters in hand, and we are a little light on resources total, even after getting hit with a 2-for-1 Let It Go. Just hasn't really inked anything in the last few turns.
That's true. Kind of once you're in a position where whole new worlds are almost as good or better for your opponent than they are for you, you kind of get restricted in your card draw as the steel player, right?
Mhm.
You don't think you're gonna want to play a whole new world, which means all the cards in your hand are kind of gonna have to do work, and that's why we saw Kurt maybe hesitate to ink previously. We did ink an aerial this turn though.
Looks like we're gonna play Stitch Rockstar, but for some reason choosing not to play the Lantern as well. Maybe wants to bluff something like a Grab Your Sword or potential double Grab Your Sword.
Mm,
Unclear, but
bit
right
of a
now,
gambit.
yeah, I think having the Lantern down makes a little more sense. But
I agree.
maybe holding it to loot with a Simba actually that actually is probably the reason.
True. I think we've actually seen that a couple times and
Mhm.
only called it out once or twice. Players being cognizant of the Simbas in their deck and wanting to keep some resources available to throw away.
All right, here is 2 ink for the turn, and we're gonna play a Rapunzel
Ouch.
and draw 2, as well as the Carefree Surfer. And now we're gonna quest for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, up to 13, and just 2 Stitch Rockstars on Kurt's side of things. And Harlan Fair looking like he's about to make day number 2. If he can get 7 more lore, it's up to Kurt now if he can challenge. We have at least 1 Grab Your Sword in hand, but the willpower on the opposing characters is so high.
Yeah, we saw Belle do what she often does. She did get some extra ink down, which is a bit of a bonus, but usually Belle quests only once, unless you're really lucky, and that's what's going to happen here. But Harlan just has enough other big characters that he might not need the Belle anymore. And this is a pretty good sign for Harlan. Kurt tapping out for a Carefree Surfer would leave him only able to interact through a couple challenges, maybe one or two grab your sword, and that would not quite be enough, I don't think.
Draws 2. Doesn't find it. I think that's going to be game. We can double send into the bell or sing a whole new world, or sing grab your sword and send into the bell. But then we got 2, 4, 6, 8 still on the table. So it's going to be all she wrote, and Harlan Fear are going to be advancing at 3 wins into day number 2 in top 8 and fight for his fair share of $5,000 in cash. Big congratulations to good friend Harlan Fear on his win. And Kurt's not out of it yet, though. Has one more match to play. If he wins, he's into day 2. If he loses, he's out. And he'll be waiting a little while, though, as we get our other pod situated and playing that. But we still have